Today, I'm talking to Judith Eve Rosen, who, as well as being a veterinary social worker, is also a pet loss therapist. So we're going to be talking all about this new profession of veterinary social work, as well as all things pet loss, as this is a subject that is very close to my heart. So I'm Dr. Helene. I'm an emergency medicine doctor and also a vet certified animal aromatherapy specialist, as well as a dog behaviourist. And so this show is for people who want to look after their own health and the health of their pets in an integrative way. So we talk about everything from gut health and stiff joints to itchy skin and the power of essential oils. And I use my experience in human and animal wellness to give you the natural tools you need to help you and your dog feel your best at both ends of the lead. Don't forget to subscribe and leave me a 5-star review. And let me know what topics you'd like me to cover in the future as well. So, hey, Judith, welcome. It's so good to see you. So first of all, tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you. Well, I am a veterinary social worker based in New York City. My main domain of veterinary social work that I do is pet loss therapy. And I have a virtual practice, and I see clients that are here in what we call the tri-state area here in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut.
Oh, fantastic. And so veterinary social work is quite a new thing, because it is more popular in the States, but it's I know, and it's new there as well, isn't it? And it's new in the UK. So what exactly is it?
Yeah, well, we're actually growing, and there's work being done in England, there's work being done in Canada and other countries around the world, but veterinary social work has been around, I'd say maybe 20 years. The program that I went to was at University of Tennessee at Knoxville, which is one of the, I think was the first program like it. Mm-hmm. And basically what we do is support the human-animal bond. So any area where social work might fit in, that's what we address. For example, like I had said earlier, I am in the grief counseling domain, helping people after they've lost a beloved pet. But there's also, and I do a little bit of this too, support and well-being for veterinary professionals. This means vets, vet techs. So we now have veterinary social workers embedded at veterinary schools, veterinary hospitals. You were an ER doctor, you were saying before, so you can imagine what a vet ER is like.
Yeah.
And in a minute, I'm going to tell you why I became a veterinary social worker, because that's why. And the other two domains are animal-assisted interventions and different ways that we can help with the link between animal abuse and domestic violence.
Yeah.
One example of that is to encourage shelters, domestic violence shelters, because it's not always women.
No.
To allow pets to come into the shelter. Very often there's a threat that if you leave the abuser, then they will in turn hurt the pet.
Yeah.
So being able to some people will stay in these situations because they don't want to leave their pet behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because there is a link, I know, with the RSPCA in the UK and also sort of social work. They will inform each other if they see something going on because of this awful link as well. And then so I just think this is brilliant. And so did you just decide to specialize in pet loss, or was it something that you just sort of fell into really?
No, it's very much a situational thing, and it's something that we social workers tend to do. So wherever we are, if we see people in distress, we wonder if that's a category of social work. So like I don't know if you're in a supermarket and people are arguing over the groceries, like they need grocery social workers. So I had a cat that was my previous cat. That's Joni up there. She was at the veterinary hospital. They were doing an endoscopy on her. Uh-huh. And I was looking around me while I was in the waiting room, and I saw people were arguing over whether, how are we going to pay this bill? Yeah. How are we going to make the decision to euthanize or not euthanize? People were crying because they had just lost a pet. A lot of people in severe emotional distress. Yeah. And then I also noticed that the veterinarians seemed really stressed out as well. And so I look around, I see all these humans in distress, and I thought, wow, man, they could really use a social worker in here. And I thought, gee, I wonder if that's really a thing. And so I went home and went online and looked it up, and I saw that veterinary social work was indeed a thing. And I went to the University of Tennessee's program, and it just was life-changing. Unfortunately, Joni had complications actually from this surgery test that she had. Yeah. And I lost her a few days after that. Oh. So I think of veterinary social work as kind of the work that I do dedicated to her memory, as well as my book.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's interesting because I think animals have this tendency, and I think of all the things my dogs have led me to do, of leading us to things that we should be doing, and it's a nice legacy that they leave us. And so tell me about your book.
Oh, so my book is show a little closer: Life After Pet Loss, Daily Reflections for Working Through Grief. Okay. And the publisher just contacted me and was looking for a subject matter expert to write a book about pet loss. So it wasn't something that I set out to do. I was minding my own business. And the way it's structured in 365 days, kind of like a diary in a way. Right. And it gives you something to do every day. So it's not designed to be read cover to cover. If it's read cover to cover, it becomes really redundant, because I deliberately do repeat things in there on purpose. Right. Because that's some things that are so important. Yeah. And I like to remind people. So if I write about it in January, I'm going to throw it in June. If I'm talking about, for example, the guilt that people often have after losing a pet. Mm-hmm. And it's designed for people to read. One day would be a quote and then a reflection on the quote. Yeah. And the next day would be some kind of activity.
Oh, I love that.
And I make sure in the introduction, I don't know if people always read the introduction, but I make sure to say, if it's not for you at that moment, if it's triggering for you, or it's something you don't like or you're not interested in, go ahead and skip to the next page, or skip around if you want to. It really is designed so people can use it in any way that they want to.
Oh, I love that. And I was looking on your website at some of your suggestions of things for people to do, you know, and I think it's something about sort of, I think you said about holding a collar and smiling instead of, you know, and I mean, one of the things, because I had 3 dogs die last year, and they all died in a different way. There was one went very suddenly, a very fit and healthy dog, but very suddenly, so it was very traumatic. And then, you know, my elderly dog, but that was also very traumatic. And then one from cancer. But I think, interestingly, you know, what you're saying about grief as well, because one of the things I was going to say, actually, when you talk about the collar, was I found a lot of comfort going on dog walks that we used to do. And I know for some people that's very hard. But for me, although it was hard the first day I did it, the pure joy I got of those memories was so powerful. And it just helped, particularly in the very early days. It was kind of the only thing that got me through. Yeah. But I think with guilt, with all the experiences I had last year, I had guilt for no matter, even my dog Rowan, who had a perfect day for the perfect transition. You know, it wasn't, I didn't know it was going to be that morning, but it ended up being the most perfect sort of finale for him. But I think you just have guilt anyway, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Guilt. Well, I do want to talk about guilt. Before I talk about guilt, I just wanted to note that everyone grieves differently. Mm. And not only do we grieve differently, but very often we'll grieve differently about each loss. Mm. So it's really, that's what makes writing the book so hard. I know I'm writing to an audience where everyone is different. Everyone experiences grief differently. Each person's loss is different. So trying to make it as inclusive as possible is a thing. So for you, this was a really beautiful and helpful thing to be able to take those walks. And I think you were talking about legacy a little bit earlier, how our animals lead us to things. And when we're doing activities that they used to enjoy, it does help us keep connected to them. And it does continue a certain legacy of them. This is what they were interested in. This is what they love to do. And it goes along with the way we approach grief now, which is to encourage people to create a continuing bond with their loved one.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard, I think. And what I found with certainly my experience last year was people don't understand the loss of pets a lot at the time. And, you know, if you lost a child or your mum, you know, people understand that. But for some reason, I think you are made to feel that losing a pet is, you shouldn't be grieving as much. And I mean, I was very lucky because my colleagues at work, because I've worked there such a long time, they knew how important my dogs were for me. And I think one of the loveliest comments I had from a colleague was someone saying that he couldn't pretend to understand how I felt because he doesn't feel about animals the same way, but he understood how much I felt about my dogs. And you know, it was so lovely to have that, but I know that's not everyone's experience. And what would you say to people who are struggling to explain to people the loss that they're experiencing?
That they are not alone in that this is the whole reason that I do this work. It's called, there's a term for it. It's called disenfranchised grief. It's grief that you're not allowed to have, or you're made to feel ashamed of, or it's minimalized in some way. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's what they experience from their friends and family, and or just people they work with. And so they're afraid to speak about it, and they just keep it all inside. And that's actually counter to how we humans process grief. Grief is a very natural reaction to a loss. And part of grieving should involve being able to memorialize your loved one and talk about them and have some kind of shared experience with people. When you look at cultures around the world and through history, you know, there are grief rituals. There's a wake, there's a shiva, there's a memorial service, there's a burial, there's stuff we know how to do, right? Yeah. And, you know, it's only certain societies in history or there are certain cultures and religions that will also include pets, but in general, it's considered, like you said, it's considered less than, so you're very isolated by that. Yeah. And I think it's really good because I'm seeing now, just even in the past couple of years, this huge explosion in pet loss groups that are available online, pet loss platforms that you can come in 24/7, go in chat rooms or message boards, live support groups, live virtual support groups. And, you know, people are starting to accept more of it. So somebody who is experiencing this kind of disenfranchised grief and not getting what they need from the people in their direct life, my suggestion is to go online and to seek out some of these support groups that are out there.
Yeah. I did the Blue Cross in the UK. They've got a lovely Facebook group, and I was in that. I haven't really posted, but it was just nice to sort of read other people's comments, and I did ring their bereavement line a couple of times, and it was nice to just, you know, you can just cry. You can literally just cry on the phone. And, you know, and I've got friends but I think for me, my grief was so, you know, I literally lost Maz, and then 2 weeks later lost Evie, which was very traumatic because it was so sudden. Yeah. And then a few months later, I was faced with terminal cancer for Rowan. And so it was just, but particularly the 2 in May, just having that person on the end of the phone who actually was just there, you know, and it is really so beneficial. And I did a grief course as well, and actually it was a group work, and that was lovely as well, to just share and hear from other people how they're coping with it, because it makes you feel that actually your response isn't wrong. Yes. It isn't, you know, it's okay to feel that way.
Yes. So often people will say to me in therapy, am I crazy? Judy, am I crazy? I slept in my dog's bed last night. Is there something wrong with me? And it's like, no, that's not crazy at all. But we're made to feel like it is. And maybe the history of how we've looked at the human animal relationship for so long is as property. We've even, and that's, that link between domestic violence and animal abuse that I was talking about earlier, that's part of what's starting to change in laws. Laws go state by state in the United States for a lot of our different type of criminal stuff. And if somebody harms your pet, the value, the how much they're worth in dollars, if that you would sell it, is all that they have to pay back. Rather than it's a property damage.
Yeah, right? It's the same here. I mean, there has been some changes, but it's very much still they're viewed very much as property rather than a being.
Yeah, there's some states that are now designating pets as family, and that's a really good thing. But I think that's been the attitude for so long.
Yeah,
that I think that's where it comes from. And even in the United States, it can be a regional thing where certain parts of the country they look at animals a certain way, differently maybe than we do in an urban environment. Because in the urban environment, most of the animals outside of some unwanted animals. Depending, because people do keep pigeons as pets as well, and I want to acknowledge that. But they're generally, if somebody has an animal in a relationship with an animal of some kind here in the city, it's their pet, it's their family, it's their loved one.
Yeah, they are, and I think it is so difficult trying to explain to people, and that because I think I meet a lot of people with dogs, and not everyone does view their dogs as family. They love their dogs, but they don't necessarily but for me and a lot of people I know, they are literally my whole life, and the loss is it's a year on now for me, but I could easily just cry about it now. It's still very there, and I've done a lot of work, and I'm able to talk about it, and I'm functioning very well, but the grief is still very present, and people do they do forget about it, and I think grief is very lonely anyway, isn't it?
Yes.
And what would you say to someone who is struggling? What's a couple of things that they could do to perhaps help them, perhaps in the early days of the loss?
Well, I'd like to acknowledge first, if I may, that what you went through is more than the typical grief experience. I don't like to use the word normal in this line of work. It's not that you had one pet that passed away after an illness, or they were older. That might have been a different experience for you, but you had two things happening. Your grief was both compounded, because compounded grief is when you lose more than one loved one within a short period of time, and in the same month. That's really intense. And you also had a traumatic grief experience, meaning that it was unexpected, because one of your dogs, you said, was very healthy. If we lose, people that have lost a beloved pet because of an accident of some kind, it's a whole different type of human experience for many people. And so I'm actually speaking about this at a conference in Canada in October about traumatic grief. You have to screen, and as this is where being a licensed mental health professional comes in. I screen for PTSD. If somebody has told me that their pet was hit by a car or something like that, if they witnessed it, they may meet criteria for PTSD. So I do the PTSD treatment primarily with some grief work, but mainly I want to work on that trauma and getting through the trauma first. So you had a rough year. And it's going to take you longer to get through. So to answer your other question, so in the beginning, I have a tip sheet that I send to people, is to be very, very kind to yourself. To if you can, take time off from work and school. This is another thing I try to advocate for is I think companies should give bereavement leave to pets. Identify who in your life is going to be the most understanding, and let them know that you're going to need a little extra from them this week. And even if it's just to listen and maybe help with some errands and chores and things that you need help with. If you don't have anyone in your life like that, that's when I think it's really important to reach out to some of these online platforms that I've mentioned before. There's Love Baxter, there's Griefy Friends, there's Pet Loss Studio, Pet Loss Club. There's several of them that are available.
Yeah, and in the UK, there's the Blue Cross, and they have a lovely bereavement line, just to add that in for people, in the UK.
Fantastic. There's also, and it's a website that's very popular. I don't know if popular is the right word in this case, because nobody wants to be in this situation. But the Association for Pet Loss and Bereavement also has a great website, and I can send you a document that which has all this listed.
Okay, thank you.
If your listeners want to have a copy of that.
Yeah, we can put it at the bottom of the show notes.
Oh, fantastic. I have a document for that. So, getting some kind of help is important. The other thing that, like, the one tip that I think is really important is to not rush any decisions whatsoever. And that includes giving away things that belong to them or moving things. And so some people will have a rush. They just don't want to see it. It's just too upsetting, and they will throw things away. I understand if it's medical stuff, you want to get rid of pills, and if you had just doing some kind of fluid, getting rid of that makes some sense. But in general, before you give everything away, at least keep some things in a box and put that box in a closet, because later on it may not be so traumatic to look at them, and you'll be happy that you have one of their toys or their collar or something that reminds you of them. I think that's really important. The other thing is to take really good care of your health, because this is a time that you may stop eating, you may not want to shower, you may, but those little things might just help you feel better. There's a reason that in so many cultures, bringing food to the family that has lost a loved one is such a part of the tradition, because this way you can focus on your recovery, on your grieving, and not having to go out to the supermarket to, what do they call them in England? Do they call them shops? What do they call them?
Supermarkets too,
Sure. You probably don't use bodega.
No.
Okay, that's a very New York thing.
That's very New York.
Yeah, but you don't want to, if you don't want to peopling that day by going out to the stores, ask a friend to bring stuff to you, order it, whatever you need to do, and just take good care of yourself those first few days. Now, I think you had mentioned guilt before, right?
Yeah.
So there is a difference. Well, first of all, everybody feels some kind of guilt. Everyone, no matter how stellar they were as a pet guardian, they will come up with something that they didn't do, and that they'll focus on that. They'll hyper focus on that one thing they didn't do. I didn't take my dog to this dog park that they just opened up on the other side of town. Why didn't I take him there?
Yeah.
What a horrible person am I? So you focus on that. I can guarantee you that dog did not know that there was a new dog park on the other side.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that as long as you loved and cared for them and played with them, yes, you wanted more experiences for them. And I understand that. Yeah. But that dog loved you for everything else that you gave them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And there may have been times, and we remember the times that maybe we spoke harshly to them. Or, they peed on the floor, and we, kind of spoke ways that we regret and things like that. But in the type of trauma work I do, cognitive processing therapy is the technique I use, the therapy I use. We talk about the difference of levels of responsibility in some traumatic experience that happened. And guilt matches more if you've done something intentional,
right?
That you intentionally tried to hurt a loved one, to hurt your pet in some way, that you deliberately didn't take them to the dog park because you didn't want them to have any fun because they don't deserve to have fun. And regret is the more natural emotion. Maybe we did have some tiny part in it or some unintended part of it, but we never intended to do any harm whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be in some kind of an accident.
Yeah.
Because there are so many other factors that lead to that accident.
Yeah.
You know, somebody may have accidentally closed the fence incorrectly and the dog got out and got hit by a car.
Yeah.
But nobody deliberately left that door open. And we didn't know when that car was going to come in and we didn't know if the dog was going to react that time. Right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it really resonates with me because I think when Evie died, the second death, she was having stem cell treatment for her arthritis and she was very fit and healthy. She'd had the procedure before. There was no complications. We'd done a canicross race 2 days before. She'd been running around on the beach. She just had bad arthritis. But she was very fit. And so we'd been to this place before and I wasn't even worried. And I remember the girl saying to me, oh, should I tick for CPR? I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. And it never, they hadn't lost a dog in 10 years. She went through the whole procedure fine. And when they went to wake her up, she stopped breathing. And it was very traumatic for them. Like I said, they've not lost a dog in 10 years. And as an emergency medicine doctor, I see traumatic deaths all the time. You can be sat in another part of the department and you suddenly hear these screams that are just primal and you know what's happened. Yeah. And that was me. And I've heard from other people saying, oh, I let myself down when they told me my dog died. And I was like, you didn't, because my reaction, I have no shame or guilt for my reaction because my reaction was a normal reaction for the grief that I experienced. It was very traumatic. And I don't know how long I was screaming for. It could have been 10 minutes. I just couldn't believe it was just shocking. But the suddenness and, it is different, and I had so much guilt for ages and ages because I put her through that procedure. But the vets there, the staff were absolutely so beautiful, and they answered all my questions, and I'd email and they'd answer all my questions. They were just lovely because I needed just to process everything. And obviously now reflect on it. Hello, Holly. This is Holly Cat.
Hi, Holly.
Her left hip was bad. And so really, she had to have this procedure to carry on having a good quality of life. And so that helped. But in the first few weeks, I struggled so much with that horrendous grief that I actually put her through that. But I mean, it's the one thing I didn't struggle with was my reaction, because I knew my reaction was actually a normal, people have different reactions for a traumatic loss. And so, because I've experienced it so much as a doctor.
You recognized it.
I recognized, what was going on. So that in a way was a blessing.
It's interesting because we, it's a lot of words to learn what the correct definitions are. But we get guilt and shame mixed up. We humans get guilt and shame mixed up. So you did not experience shame.
No.
For crying. Right? It wasn't something that there's wrong with you. Whereas guilt is more wrong with something you did. Do you know what I mean? So so that was an interesting way to illustrate that nuance that's there. But I'm surprised when someone doesn't have guilt. Let me put it that way. I'm surprised because you second guess yourself. All the time. I'll hear people regret getting the surgery because something went wrong in the surgery. I regretted. We didn't know whether she had, Joni, whether it was IBD or lymphoma.
Okay.
She had something that had shown up on imaging as cloudy, and we wanted to determine which it was.
Yeah.
So that we would know the correct course of medication to do, right? Or treatment to do,
Yeah.
And I was working at that time I worked in a community health for about 10 years before I went into private practice. So I'm around doctors. I hear this stuff. I'm treating the doctor's patients for mental health issues, basically. And so it just seems so routine to do. And I had no idea that things even really went wrong with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that there's a chance with anesthesia that things can go wrong, but I didn't even know how often, if there's something wrong in that part of the body, that a tear can happen in the process because it's weakened. You know this, you're a doctor.
I think that's the thing, because we see so many things. It never occurred to me, and I know dogs can die under anesthetic, and people can, but it's so rare, these complications. And, you know, it never occurred to me. I mean, they went through this whole CPR, you know, because obviously I'd wanted, you know, they tried their best for about 15 minutes to bring her back. But it wasn't even something that I was worried about, because it's so rare. And it's the same, obviously, with your cat as well. You don't, you know, especially when you work in the health profession, that you see all these successes.
I'm the one that has to, because I do a lot of work in the anxiety disorders and phobias and fears. So I was the one that doctors would send them to me to talk them into getting their, you know, colonoscopy and, you know, demystifying that experience and helping to relieve the fear. So you're absolutely right. But the thing is, what's interesting is hindsight, the human's hindsight, is we know what happened that day. We know what went wrong, but we don't know if we had chosen an alternative, what would have happened if we chose that instead? You know, if I hadn't done the endoscopy and she did have cancer and she died of lymphoma, I would have blamed myself for not having the endoscopy and not, because, you know, very often chemotherapy, as you probably know, for pets is they handle it better actually than humans, from what I've heard. Is that your knowledge?
Yeah, well, I think so. I think there's I think it's interesting looking at the way animals cope with illness based on humans, because they don't have, I suppose they don't have the same fear and the same worry, because
and then physically, though, I thought that this is what the vet had told me.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I don't know. I think they can still have complications. I mean, Rowan had chemo, and he did have, you know, we would get diarrhea. He had it did cause him some anorexia, and I had to adjust that. But I do think that there's a huge psychological component that does impact on people's health, and therefore their physical well-being.
Makes sense.
But but I do think with certainly animals, you know, obviously because they can't tell us. I mean, I know that Rowan's, this drug that he was on did affect his appetite, and I had to really adjust things. And, you know, we had a very good quality of life for his last 2 months. So I don't know. I suppose maybe not. I don't know. But I do always wonder about the psychological impact on humans and how different that is with pets.
That's it. I think, but in general, you know, the point is that our hindsight is really, it gives us kind of a warped view of how we look at things.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Have these two
I wish I could get rid of it. So, you know, what we talk about is, you know, you did the best you could with the information that you had at the time. You did not know that it would end up like this, because the chances were so rare that this would happen. You know it now. The other thing that I think is really important, and I've been thinking a lot about it lately, and I haven't really looked at research yet to support it, but I do think that we have this assignment of guilt for things that happen by accident that we do. In other words, that, you know, it's like, well, I should have prevented this. I was irresponsible, or, you know, we have this way of thinking that I made a mistake. I should have been. And unfortunately, you know, we kind of punish each other. Why that? Well, did you do this? Did you do that? Well, did you smoke? Like when my dad passed from lung cancer 30 years ago, never smoked a cigarette in his life.
Yeah.
That was the first question people would ask me when I tell them, like, why don't you just comfort me instead of trying to find what my dad did right or wrong?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's interesting, you know? Isn't it? Just the things that you and certain conditions are, because Rowan had laryngeal cancer, and I was saying to someone the other day, because sort of they were looking at me, and I was like, he came from a family where they smoked a lot of cannabis, and because he had COPD, so I always expected him to have some kind of condition at some point and get cancer. I wasn't, you know, it wasn't like, you know, I just thought it because I see it in humans. Yeah, but it was funny when. It was just, I felt when they were looking at me, I had to justify it. He came from a rescue because I felt that judgment.
Yes. What did you do? So I would like to just add to that, if that's okay, on this line of thinking, that this is where mindful self-compassion is so helpful and so important, because we do make mistakes.
Yeah.
We are humans. We are fallible, and we regret them so much, you know. And I do have a lot of clients that will come to me with this very issue, that they did something that led to the accident happening with absolutely no intention, or they had done it 100 times before and there had never been a problem.
Yeah.
And the shame that comes with that is going to affect how you feel about yourself. And, you know, I'm a cognitive behavior therapist. I'm Beck Institute certified. That's my main way of working. And we work a lot with the kinds of thoughts that people are having and their beliefs about themselves and the things they're saying to themselves.
Yeah.
People are so self-punishing. And Kristen Neff is amazing. And her website, self-compassion.org, is really just a pioneer in this field of mindful self-compassion. Right. The idea is to, it uses mindfulness to help us treat ourselves the way we're supposed to treat our loved ones.
Yeah,
I like that. You know, speak to yourself the way you would speak to your best friend, because hello, who do you actually spend the most time with in your life? Yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so I work with the clients that are saying to themselves, it's my fault. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have left the door open. I was so stupid. What am I, an idiot? If you're hearing that over and over again, that's going to feed that sense of guilt.
Yeah. Just one more thing I wanted to ask you as well is about anticipatory grief. What would you advise someone? Because I think that's huge. Because I literally last year, I spent the entire year in anticipatory grief, traumatic grief, compounded grief, and then more anticipatory grief. And it is, and I think that's not talked about enough either. What can people do to manage that?
I think it's important to learn about it, to understand it, and know that you are feeling loss now, because loss incorporates more than just death. Loss is loss of mobility, loss of the activities that you used to do. Let's say, for example, with your dog. You know, maybe you went for hiking with your dog or running with your dog, and they're not up to doing that anymore. You know, you can't play with them the same way. And I know that might sound trivial to people, but it is a loss. It's
a loss of your life, isn't it? It's a loss of the things that you enjoy to do, you're doing together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there may also be guilt along with it that comes with, you know, am I responsible for why they are ill?
Yeah.
And, you know, so you're starting to deal with guilt and regret even before they are actually physically gone. And you're already dealing with the loss of the things you used to do together. And I think it's really important at that stage to start doing some of the interventions, just the term that we use, with some of the activities that you may do after the death of a loved one. And that would include, there are caregiver groups to join. And I cannot tell you how important that is.
Yeah.
And by the way, this goes even if anyone who's listening has a human loved one.
Yes.
It's really important to be with other people who are going through the same thing. There's just something about that shared human experience, which I think is very healing. To journal and talk about it, write about how you're feeling, get it started now. What I have seen, I'm thinking of one client in particular, actually, is that they just devoted all their extra time to caring for this pet. And they knew that, I'm using they and I'm using pet because I try to protect people's
that's fine.
health information. They knew that they did everything for them that they could possibly do. So when that pet passed away, we really had like 1 or 2 sessions after, and that was it. They were done. Because they felt like, you know what? I've already grieved. I actually feel so good about what I did. And I have closed that chapter. I feel like I've really processed it with you and talked to you about the loss while we were waiting. So I think caregiver, and the final thing that is most important of all is take care of yourself. Take care of your physical health. Because a lot of times you are devoting so much time and energy on top of all your other responsibilities, you can get sick because you're not taking care of yourself. So make sure of the things I always stress, which is nutrition and exercise and good sleep.
Yeah, good.
Have that what they call it, I think the 3-legged stool it's referred to sometimes. Any one of those goes, the whole thing falls.
No, good advice, because you can't, and one of the things, I was a flight attendant before I became a doctor, and it's that whole put your own oxygen mask on before you help others, because you can't give from an empty cup. And it's so important, because it is exhausting looking after an elderly dog or an elderly person, or you do need to look after yourself as well. Absolutely. So thank you, Judith. I could literally speak to you for ages. It's so interesting. So how can people find you?
Okay, so I have a website, juditheverosen.com, and they can go to my website. You can reach out to me there. There's a form there that you can use to message me. You can follow me, please, on my Instagram. I'm like one of the old ladies into social media at this time, but it's at My Pet Loss Therapist. And I think you can read it. Actually, it's on the screen right now.
And I'll put all the details in the show notes as well, so that people can find you.
And I answer every message and I respond to every comment. And I can only see people that are in New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut. But if you need help connecting to care, I've got information I can send you.
But they can buy your book wherever they are in the world.
Yes. So, it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles.
And that sounds a brilliant book, actually. It really does. So I really love it. Oh, thank you, Judith, so much. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me again.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure.